Welcome back to another episode of The Buck Stops Here. I'm your host, David Maples, and today I'm here with Cynthia Fails, someone who has a background in psychology, went into education for years, became a published author, went to talk at a university level, and now has started her own publishing empire. So the reason I have her on the show today is because as she's been through this journey, she has been through the ups and downs, the ins and outs of every piece that can happen. And if you want to be a metal business, if you want to have the mental mettle and fortitude for how you're going to move forward in your business, there's no better paradigmatic example than Cynthia Fails. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thanks, David.
So, so let's start a little bit with your background in history, okay?
Sure.
So, you went to undergrad, you were in psychology, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me, so how did you go from there to educator? What happened?
So there was a summer right before I graduated where I got the chance to work with the Kansas City Freedom Schools. And the Kansas City Freedom Schools, well, the National Freedom School Program is meant to help underserved youth, historically underserved youth, to find a love of reading. And we expose them to all sorts of different types of books and a lot of cultural appreciation. And that almost flipped a switch for me. And I was like, I don't care what it is that I do. There's going to be some level of education and working with people to help right whatever ship it is in whatever industry. But that's how I ended up in education. So graduated from Kansas State with my degree in psychology, and that was the first spring semester right after 9/11.
Yeah.
So you have an idea of what the job market looked like, right?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to go back to the Kansas City Freedom Schools during that summer. Thankfully, I got the chance to land back home at my parents' house while I was trying to find work. But the Kansas City Freedom Schools just continued to give me opportunities and kind of tied me over until I could find work, which took a while. But then when I did find work, I actually did a year of service with AmeriCorps Vista, and it was still here in the Kansas City area. But I got the chance to work at the United Way of Wyandotte County as their youth service organizer. So there I got to connect youth, usually through the court system, to opportunities to volunteer at organizations around the county. My approach was to find whatever it was that they loved to do and connect them to an organization that was doing that so that they would stay beyond the court-mandated hours and continue to volunteer.
So for those of you listeners of the show who might be a little bit younger than I am, there was a recession that happened after 9/11, 2001, 2002. There was a recession, and it was a pretty substantial one, but it paled in comparison, obviously, to the Great Recession in 2008 and on. But at that point in time, it was one of the worst recessions that we'd had in decades. And so it did change a lot of things in the environment. So you were in education for a while, an educator, and then you wrote your first book. What was your first book called?
First book is called The Christmas Cookie.
Okay, so tell me about The Christmas Cookie.
So The Christmas Cookie is about a cookie that wakes up on a plate meant for Santa on Christmas Eve. So he wakes up and he's like, wait a minute, I'm going to get eaten if I stay here. So he has to decide whether or not he wants to run away or whether or not he wants to serve his greater purpose and go ahead and get eaten so that Santa can continue to go from house to house to house.
Yeah, no spoilers here, but is it a happy ending?
It depends on how you view the book.
In the show notes below this, we'll link out to The Christmas Cookie. If you would like to get a copy of these books and support Cynthia's endeavors, it would be wildly appreciated. But that's a good point. I guess it depends on your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what literary stuff's all about, though.
Absolutely.
Art and creativity is, I guess it's always that intersection of what the person gets out of it.
Yeah.
And it's different for everyone.
It is. And what's funny about that story, on the surface, is it's about a cookie that's meant for Santa, but at the core of it, it's about having faith in what you can't see on the other side of what's right in front of you, right?
So you went from there. Did you publish another book before you went back into academia?
No, that was the only book that I published. I published a book and picked up quilting and then went right back into academics.
So so you went into academia. You taught at the collegiate level now.
I did, yeah.
And then you went off to start your own publishing company.
This is true.
So tell me about this journey.
Yeah, so it was an interesting journey because when I went back into education, I actually had the chance to help students learn how to ramp up their skills so that they could be collegiate level ready and stay and graduate, which is important. So I was doing that during the day, and then at night I was writing and publishing and illustrating my own stuff, putting it out into the world. And then because of where I was working, you work in academia, there are a lot of professors and staff that are interested in publishing their work. And so they started using me as a resource, and I was helping them to get their work out into the world as well. And oddly enough, my supervisor saw what I was doing, knows how much she knew at the time, how much I loved the work that I was doing during the day, but also what I was doing at night. And she asked when I was going to take a chance on myself. And when we had the conversation, it was immediate for me. I was like, right now. It was something that I had been considering. It was something that I had been trying to talk to my husband about at the time as well. And her question was right on time. So
think about how rare that is in business.
Yeah.
To have a supervisor or manager or boss, for lack of a better term, who sees that your best destiny does not lie within the confines of their organization.
Yeah.
That's a real gift.
It really was.
And so you went off and started, was that when LaunchCrate was born?
That's when LaunchCrate was born.
So tell me about LaunchCrate.
So LaunchCrate was born, I started full-time in 2017, the middle of 2017. But the second book that I published myself, I published under the LaunchCrate brand. And LaunchCrate is really meant to give a platform to people. You think about a soapbox, right? Mm-hmm. We're trying to give people a platform so that they can share their ideas with the world. And that's what LaunchCrate is for. But we've gone a step beyond just helping people share their ideas. We're doing so in a way that makes sure that creatives are getting fairly compensated for their work. And that was a result of me publishing The Christmas Cookie.
So I'm going to go ahead and go for a minute. I have a background in book publishing that no one knows about.
Nice.
I worked for a games company years ago, and we were publishing books. And the model there were a couple different models. And I don't know if this is across the publishing industry, but you could go send your book to Random House or Penguin. You could send your manuscript or whatever it is, and they like it. They take a chance on it, et cetera. And if you haven't published anything before, it's really, really hard. You'll get rejected dozens or even hundreds of times in some cases, right? And it's that last envelope you send that's always the most important, it feels like. So, but in our industry, what we discovered was that you would print a book or create a manuscript or book. You'd either write it yourself. They would either publish it for you. But then you had to have distributors to get it in the hands of people. And the way it worked is, let's say the book is, I'm just going to use a number. I'm going to say the book is $20. It costs you $5 to print it, hypothetically speaking, if it's illustrated with color, et cetera. This is a hardbound book, obviously. $20 book. I've got cost of $5, and I get it to a distributor. They buy it for $10, and then it goes to the stores, and the stores get it for $7. And I, as an author, am squeezed it between somehow the publishing company and whatever the book costs. So I might end up getting I'm not going to say a nickel, but I might get 50 cents per book I sell.
That would be great.
So, well, that would be great.
Under that model.
Under that model. And, but I've seen that's a big model out there. So when you looked at it, you'd have a book. We had a book that sold, I think 30 or 40,000 copies, but we didn't make money. We were broke as a company because we couldn't, that didn't work. Because I think we were clearing $1. And how we'd worked it out, we'd worked out something clears on $1. But when you look at that, that's not a lot of money for 2 years. You can't support your staff or anything else.
And nor can an author support themselves on that as well.
So tell me about your journey or what you see because self-publishing, when I was involved in this back in 2001 or 2002, self-publishing wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
So tell me about the different models that exist out there right now for authors.
So there are quite a few models that exist out there. There's the traditional publishing realm, which is what you just described. There's the hybrid publishing world where you pay, and I usually tell people don't do this, where you pay for a publisher to publish your work and you're splitting the profit.
I've seen that. Where they'll come in and say, we'll publish your book, you pay us $10,000 or $15,000. I don't really know what they do for that. But it's not like you get an editor, right?
No.
Okay, so that's another model.
That's a model.
So you want to be an author,
right?
And you have $20,000 just burning a hole in your pocket. You can do this, but you're not probably going to be successful.
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on a lot of factors, right?
Okay.
If you are a social media influencer and you have a lot of people who follow you and support you and are looking for more information from you, self-publishing, not hybrid publishing, self-publishing could be a good way to go, as is going with a smaller boutique publisher as well, right?
Okay.
You don't necessarily need the big five. And a lot of the smaller indie publishers like LaunchCrate and like some of the other publishers that I'm connected to, we found a way to do it so that authors are getting more compensation for their work than what they would have done before. But what you're looking for is reaching critical mass and selling the book in bulk, not a copy here and a copy there. We're trying to sell to groups. We're trying to sell to large organizations who will continue to spread the word so those ripples continue to spread.
So this is like a large bookseller who's going to buy 10,000 copies of your book or 50,000 copies of your book. Okay. So tell me, so tell the audience real quick, what does self-publishing look like? And then what does the LaunchCrate model look like?
So self-publishing is when you are responsible for making sure that your idea comes to fruition and turns into a book, which means you're responsible for writing the manuscript, you're responsible for editing, you're responsible for book layout, for typesetting, for the cover design. Whether you are doing it or paying somebody else to do it, you are responsible for turning your idea into a physical book and either doing bulk copies in print runs or print on demand. Either of those models I've seen be really effective for authors, right? For LaunchCrate, what we're doing is for those that we traditionally publish, we're coaching them through the process. So maybe it's the first book that they do with us and the second book they publish on their own. Ultimately, for me, what I want are authors who feel well equipped to go out and do it themselves the next time, because that's how you start to change the game. You get them well-versed on marketing. You get them well-versed on how to sell their book. You get a product that looks and rivals the big five and what they put out, which we have access to now because we have the same technology that they're using. And we can do things differently in how we publish books as well. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is turn the publishing industry on end. So those who traditionally publish with us, 60% of the profit is going back to the creatives, whether that is just the author or an author-illustrator combo, and then 40% is coming back to LaunchCrate so that we can continue to create ripples of change.
So why wouldn't you just keep them as a captive audience? Why wouldn't you keep them as your people as you move forward through it, right?
Yeah.
Why would you want to equip them so they could do the next book on their own? What's the rationale for that?
The rationale for me is if you are changing the industry, if you're changing a system that's broken, the more people who are equipped out there with knowledge to do it themselves in the right way, the more leverage you have when you're trying to change that system, right? If the system is broken, why are we trying to navigate and work our way through a system that needs complete obliteration instead of, like, we're trying to patch the system instead of, we, generally speaking, as people, are trying to patch the system instead of starting over. And for me, if we can equip people with the knowledge and the understanding of how to do it themselves, we don't need the system. We are the system at that point.
So this is true disruption because as you disrupt the system, you're not concerned about how it affects LaunchCrate. If they don't come back to you in the future, that's fine because there's another 100 people you can affect and make change with.
Yeah.
And each one of those ripple effects has a compounded effect long term on the industry. Am I incorrect in that?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. Why are you doing this?
This is a part of who I am. I think
It's not. I'm being serious about this. Why would you take this on?
Yeah. Sometimes things are funneled through you.
Sure.
This is one of those things that was being funneled through me. Education, equity, everything that has come to me. I'm using all of the skills and all of the lessons that I learned, trying to be patient through all of the recessions that I experienced.
Yeah.
And just everything that I have learned along the way, I'm pouring into LaunchCrate in a way so that we can essentially right the ship. In thinking about the America in which I want to live,
Yeah.
I can say that I want it to look like this, or I can do things to set it up.
Talk is cheap,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there, kind of talking heads, who say the things, and then when you pull back the curtain, there's no action.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's my question for you.
Sure.
This is the medal season, right? About having mental fortitude in adversity. I want you to talk about some of the challenges you faced along the way. Because here's the thing, the Big Five, your industry is dominated by the Big Five. We don't need to name them. You can go Google that and say Big Five book publishers in the United States, and you'll find a Google result.
Yeah.
That being said, what are the kind of things you've seen that have been challenging for you? You moved from an Ivy Tower. You were in academia.
I was, yeah.
You had a good job with a paying thing, and you jumped off. This is one thing on the Buck Stops here. We love people who have jumped off that collective cliff.
Yeah.
And if we don't flap our wings, those rocks are very real.
Yeah.
So what are kind of the things along the way that you have seen have been challenging for you? And what advice would you give to other business owners on how to navigate that?
Yeah. The first 3 years, first 2.5 to 3 years were the toughest.
Yeah.
Because you are proving your model.
Mm-hmm.
You are reaching out to people who are interested in publishing and sharing your expertise with them and trying to share your vision with them in a way so that they understand. But I don't ever want to bring on somebody like kicking and screaming along, right? I want to find the people who are like, yes, that's a part of who I am as well. Let's go make change together, right? So it was hard pivoting and finding those folks, which means income is low.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had a partner who was working full time, which gave me the chance to fail quickly.
Yeah.
In a way that helped me to get to the audience that I'm looking for, right? Fail, learn, recoup, do it again, until I can get to the place where we're now making money. As you mentioned, book publishing, even with the model that we have, you're still not bringing in that much money with the percentages, right?
Yeah,
60-40 split.
It depends on it. I guess it depends. If you hit a home run, if you get I don't know, if you get a Stephen King or a J.K. Rowling or something like that, I mean, 1 million books is real. But most books sell less than, 5,000 copies?
Yes.
So, so how do you do that?
For us, we are marketing the books that we have, but we have not only the traditional publishing, but we also offer publishing services. So for those authors who are interested in self-publishing, we give them the same tools that we're giving our traditionally published authors, but they are paying for the services. So at the end, they come out with a book and the skills to do it themselves multiple times over.
So I did check you out a little bit online and tried to figure out what you're doing. And one of the things that makes you very different than most of the publishing houses, and I don't want to name the big ones, but as being in those rooms 2 decades ago now. That's so weird to think about. Anyway, but being in some of those conversations in those rooms, you're offering everything from social media help and training to you're actually providing video for these authors to get their information out there.
Yes.
I don't know of any of the big ones who are doing that. Am I wrong?
I don't either. No, I don't either. Yeah.
Okay. So it's very different, but yeah, I mean, you have a vested interest in it because you do want to kind of break the system and replace it with something more equitable and beneficial to everybody. Mm-hmm. So you've got this. So the first 3 years of any new business, when I do consulting, I always tell people, take whatever your income numbers are and cut them by 70%. Mm-hmm. And people don't do that.
Yeah. I
sit around tables with people in new business. They're like, we could make $8 billion next year. And I'm like, no. That's just.
You could.
I could also, I'm a man who's 5'7" or whatever it is. And I could walk onto an NFL football team tomorrow.
You never know.
I mean, you never know, but I wouldn't, I'm not a betting person, but I would not bet on that.
Right.
Okay. So you survived that. What other kind of things across the way have you run into? Like you got the model, you had extra income behind you for those things when the times are lean.
Yeah.
Right. And actually one of the things that's really cool about LaunchCrate is you're helping these would-be authors. You're helping them get in there without having, self-publishing's fine if they've got money to do that kind of thing. But if they don't, you're basically taking a percentage and you actually have a vested interest in them being successful.
Yeah.
And I think that's very interesting compared to the current models out there in the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. For you, what are the other kind of challenges you had to overcome? Like you said, I never knew this was coming, or I never expected X.
Gosh, I think the biggest challenge, and this is something that I'm still working through right now, for me is trusting other people with, this is like my child, right? Trusting other people with my baby, and seeking help, which, you get to a critical mass. You get to the tipping point, and it's either going to make you or it's going to break you. And if you have to ask for help, you have to ask for help. So
I always tell people that going from 1 to 10 is a giant leap. Going from 10 to 25 is a giant leap. 25 to 50, and then from 50 to 250. And I always tell people once they cross the 10-person threshold, you have to look at your next hire needs to be better at the core function, the thing that made you the best in starting this company.
Yep.
At 10, when you're managing personnel and things like that and moving beyond there, you have to find someone who can do that core function better than you can, and you have to check your freaking ego. And I don't know if you've run into that as well as you're growing this thing, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I am fully open to finding somebody that is better than me, because ultimately that makes the business better.
But that's ultimately, it's about working. Great things only happen in, I'm going to go and say something that's probably not popular on the Buck Stops here, but great things, I think, only happen in teams.
Yeah.
No person is an island. The idea of the self-made individual is largely I don't know where the myth was born. I don't know if that's Promethean or something, back in the collective consciousness or something like that. I always wonder, like, where we get these myths and why we keep, like, we have baggage. Why do we saddle our kids with them? I have no idea.
Right.
Same thing with these myths we have in business about the self-made individual. And we kind of lionize these people. Oh, this is the first XYZ person to make cross the threshold.
Yeah.
So asking for help, how did you get through? That's a hard thing to do, especially when you're very competent. How do you ask for help?
I got a coach.
Okay. No, that's a very,
serious.
We actually talked about in one of the episodes, we talked about how do you hire that executive coach? And as somebody who's hired 3 bad coaches and 1 good one, it's a challenge, right?
Yeah. Well, I only hired 1 good one.
See,
thankfully.
I need to listen to you. Can you coach me on how to do that?
I got really lucky.
Okay. No, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. But the coach that I worked with worked to heal some of the stuff that was inside, so that I could get outside of the need to feel like I had to control and do all of these things. And once you work through all of that internal stuff, then the rest of this becomes, I'm not going to say easy, because it's still difficult, but it's easier to do.
But you always have to do the work. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
No one can make you do it.
And you have to continue to do the work. Yeah.
I have a question about the future now.
Sure.
We are entering this brave new world of artificial intelligence. And we've already seen Amazon there's been a raft of published books on Amazon that in some cases are literally lifting other people's wholesale. They're being written by machine. Most of them are not good. But, and I've read a couple. I bought one because people, I think the review said this is the worst piece of, I regret to call it literature, but this is the worst piece of anything written you'll ever put on your nightstand. And I was like, I have to buy this book.
Yeah.
And it should have just been blank. They were right. It was terrible.
Oh, gosh.
It's terrible. I feel like we should do like a poetry night where we do like a spoken word thing, and I could read excerpts from this book. I will not name the book. But yeah, so you're seeing artificial intelligence in your industry. And we see it. We're seeing a lot of, we're seeing artists being, and I'm calling authors artists.
Absolutely.
I know that authors don't always think of themselves in those terms. But any creative exercise is artistry.
Absolutely.
How are you thinking about artificial intelligence as it will change the industry, et cetera?
Yeah, so I actually have a book on my bookshelf called I Forced a Bot to Write This Book.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's somebody that is giving you an overview and then sharing what the prompt was, and then you get to read what the bot wrote, right? And some of it is decent.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there is something that the robots, that artificial intelligence just cannot do, that we do so uniquely humanly, right? And it's that piece that I think I want to encourage people to continue to lean into, right? Even if you feel like an AI can help you with your book outline, or AI can give you reference for something that you're writing,
if they don't make it up. But
Right,
sure. I
right.
mean, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, you get the opportunity to go in and double check the research, to double check the information that they give you. You should be doing this. I'm going to say that again. You should be doing this.
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
There are a lot of people that aren't doing it. But ultimately, I think of AI as a tool.
Okay.
Just like any other tool, right? It can help you with your outline. It can give you a first paragraph that you can then go back and modify. And maybe that first paragraph springs you into an entire chapter or 3 chapters or an entire book. But you get the chance to use the tool how you think the tool would be most useful to you. So you get to shape that.
I have some pretty strong feelings about what's going on. In the way on the Buck Stops Here, we don't talk about. I did a 3-part series on AI last season. We'll link to that in the show notes if you want to see it. It's actually holding up okay. First episode's got some age on it now, but it's it's 8 or 10 months old now at this point. So might as well. And in the AI world, that's 2 decades, right? But it held up okay. I just cut minute 2 to minute 3:50, whatever it is. But that being said, something I've been thinking about a lot is that the way these stochastic variable systems kind of do is they generate kind of the average of the next best word, et cetera. And when you talk about really good literary ideas or really good things, these themes that make a great novel, there are some unified themes. Like supposedly there's 35, basic storylines, person versus nature versus virtue, all those kind of literary things. But the things that make great literature right now, connecting these disparate points that make you human, they're considered great literature or great works of writing because they're not just saying the same thing everybody else has said. And I'm not sure, maybe the machines will get there in a decade, but at this point in time, I think what you're seeing is, I think it's largely correct. I don't think they're even close.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we can say A leads to B, but when you start talking about really what makes your book unique, your individual voice, your individual perspective. If I could distill Cynthia down into an algorithm, I might be able to get to the outcome, but we are not even close to that.
No. It's funny. I was writing a Medium article.
Okay.
And was struggling with the draft of it. And I asked ChatGPT to write the article in the style of me, CEO of Fails. Yeah, because I just wanted to see what it would. And it was close. But it was still, AI and what they're generating now is based off of what has been done, right?
Yes.
It doesn't lead us forward into new ideas at this point. And so that's the piece that's missing, right? So it's somewhat in my voice, but as I'm reading it, I'm like, I wouldn't say it like that. So here's the piece that I like, and here's the piece that I like, and let me double check these references. And now how do I take this framework that I've created based off of the prompt that they've, and the text that I get from them, right, what was generated. Now how do I take that and turn it into an article that is in my actual voice, that is sending the message that I want to send?
So I have a follow-up question I've got to ask.
Yeah.
How do you, as a published author, feel about the fact that they have scraped the content of your books? Because that's how they were able to generate stuff closer to your voice. How do you feel about that? Did anyone ever ask you? Did they call you up and ask you if it was okay if they ate your books?
They didn't.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, a human could do the same thing.
They could.
They might like the style that I write in.
But they couldn't do it in 30 seconds.
They couldn't do it in 30 seconds, but they could still do it.
I guess maybe that's the part that makes me mad.
Yeah.
If you had to read my book and buy my book, I might feel differently about it. Like you read it, and it took you a couple days to read it. Then I might be like, oh, you put the time in. But if you did it in 20 seconds, I think it's going to make me angry.
I mean, it is what it is.
I guess. I don't know.
There might be a human being out there somewhere that can read. Maybe not in 20 seconds.
Not yet. Probably at some point, right? I don't know. I'm really. I've got to give a talk in a couple of weeks at this intellectual property summit, and not talking about me, but I've been struggling with. I've been playing devil's advocate myself as an attorney lately of how I would make the arguments that they're not doing copyright infringement, and I've got some pretty novel arguments, and I'm kind of hating myself because of them. And I'm really having a hard time with it.
Yeah.
I'm really having a hard time with it because I think we all need to, with the new technology, struggle with it. For you, you're seeing it as a tool. So you're seeing this as an opportunity.
Absolutely.
So in the long run, how can we make this? So let's spin this forward into the future a little bit.
Sure.
How can we use the artificial intelligence or force the tools to kind of bend to our will that speed up the acceleration of your disruption in the industry? Because, I mean, maybe that's the best outcome.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
That's a good question.
Well, no,
I don't know that I have the answer to it right now, but yeah, that's a good question.
We can think about this and come back to it. I just think it's really amazing. If you could go back and talk to yourself a decade ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay, a decade ago, how old would I have been? Okay,
got a decade ago. I don't have to. I could do 2017. I could go back to. Let's go back. It's so weird that pandemic era is just like it doesn't exist. It's like these 3 years that are just a blank spot.
Like the pandemic was great for us.
I'm really confused about this right now. Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Okay, so the pandemic, everybody is locked in their house.
They are locked in their houses.
And things are changing rapidly for people, which means they stop and they reflect on their life. So that book idea that they've been sitting on, now it becomes priority, where before priority was, oh, I have to work. I have to do this for these other people. Well, now I can do this work while I'm at home. And I also have the space and the capacity now to do my own thing as well. And so a lot of people were coming to me for help publishing books during the pandemic. We also, because of my coaching, we also made a pivot into a new service that we offered called Idea to Editor, where we take people through this master course. They have an idea for a book. They sit down with us for 8 weeks, and then by the time the 8 weeks is up, they have a manuscript that's ready for an editor.
Now, is this an in-person course? Is this something somebody can go sign up for online?
This is something they can do online, but so far, we have Zoom sessions, so it's all live.
So if they wanted to get involved with this right now, where would we, I'm going to let you pitch it. Where would I go to find out about this?
You'd go to launchcrate.com, click on Idea to Editor. It should be up in our menu bar, and it'll take you to all the information that you need to know.
That is wild. So it's LaunchCrate, that's LaunchCrate.com. And Idea to Editor. That's really fabulous. So you have a whole online curriculum with this thing you've built out.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be in the hands of every author who's aspiring, especially if they don't know. I mean, I guess in the process of doing this, they might decide maybe they don't want to write a book.
Maybe they don't want to, yeah. So what happens is the folks who go through the live course with us, they see instant results. And it scares them. Because they're like, oh no, do I really want to write this book?
Because now you're kind of out there and you could do it. You could do it.
Yeah,
right?
so part of the benefit of having the course as a live course is that they also receive coaching from me. So they have the one-on-one coaching. So when they hit that wall and I can identify it, I can see it coming usually. And within a few days, I can predict when they're going to hit that wall.
So for those of you listening, there's something here I don't know if you figured out. Cynthia is herself a coach within the context of her specialized domain.
Yeah.
And she herself also has a coach. So, and for those of you out there who are wondering if coaching works, the answer is yes.
The answer is absolutely yes.
Absolutely yes. With the right coach,
absolutely,
of course, right?
Yeah.
So with that, but going back in time to 2017, so we don't want to go back a decade, that's fine.
Sure. We can go back a decade.
What would you go back and tell yourself? Either a decade or 6 or 7 years ago now, what would you go back and tell them? That younger version of yourself, what would you tell them to get out of your own way and do? What advice would you give to yourself?
I think whether it was 2017, whether it was 10 years ago, whether it was 20 years ago, I think I would give myself the same advice, and that's do it. It's going to be okay. Just do it.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
How do they know it's going to be okay? What do they have to trust in?
They just have to trust themselves.
Have to trust themselves. So would you say that enough people don't trust themselves?
Yeah, I think we doubt ourselves regularly.
Is it that imposter syndrome thing?
Sometimes it's imposter syndrome, and sometimes it's, coming from the outside world as well. But
since you launched LaunchCrate, what is the thing you've been most, I'm going to go ahead and say this. What are you most proud of having done this? This is not about pride or hubris. What are you look at and you say, I am so happy that I did that?
I was trying to pinpoint it.
If you had to pick one.
That's a good thing.
Top three. That makes it easy, right?
Top three is that we infuse tech in our books. Right?
Okay.
So you've interviewed Candace McField. She has QR codes in her book that take you to the exercises, so you can see the exercises.
Now, that is wild.
Yeah.
We interviewed her for a companion podcast called the KC Leaders Podcast. She's a fitness guru, for lack of a better term right now. Really amazing. I'd be glad to link to that in the episode stuff, but a really cool lady. But so you put QR codes in her actual book.
Yeah, so we use QR codes in her book. We started using them with the book that I wrote about my grandfather's life. So you scan the QR codes, and now you are transported to the couch in his living room. So you can hear him telling you his life stories.
Wow.
We've used QR codes to embed a course within a book as well that we just released last year. This was actually the person that coached me. I got to coach him through the process of writing his book. And so Love with No Place to Land is about navigating your grief journey. So he's got his parts of the book, and then there's an online course as well. So we've fused the two together.
So, okay. So this is I did not know we were going to talk about technology on this episode, which this is great. So you literally, you're disrupting an industry you think needs to be disrupted, but you are changing the way that books are written and published. So what you're saying is that this is more of it's almost like an interactive medium to some extent.
Yeah. We're pushing the bounds of books, absolutely.
So are we going to get to that Harry Potter place in the movies where you can see the stuff moving in the books? I don't know. Does that change what books are?
I'd love to see that.
So I don't know. I've thought about that a lot lately, especially with the AR and VR stuff. There's a whole level of there's just a whole level of stuff you could do with that. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. Is there anything else you would like to tell our listeners right now about your journey or how you think it could help them, inform them, no matter what industry they're in? It could be in book publishing, but it might be something unrelated, like, I don't know, halogen bulb manufacturing.
Yeah.
I pulled that out of nowhere. That's not specific. There's nobody I'm talking about, so Phillips, don't sue me.
Yeah, honestly, if there's anything that I could tell people, I would tell them to trust the ideas that are coming to them, even the ones that sound scary and that sound impossible. There's a reason that they're being funneled to you. So just trust that even if you don't know how to make it come true or come to life, that you are going to be connected to people and resources that can help you to make it come to fruition.
Do you think the reason people don't trust themselves is because that represents a certain change in their life?
Absolutely.
So it's about having courage and grit when facing the change.
Yeah.
And trusting the fact that you can get through this. You might need help. And that's a big part of that journey. Yeah. And what is it? The journey is the important part of it, right? It's not just where you end up.
It's not the destination.
It's not the destination journey. You're never guaranteed a destination.
That's the truth.
I think this is really good information. And no matter what business you're in, I think this is stuff you need to listen to. And this is my no BS segment of this episode as we're bringing it to a close. If you think that what she's talking about doesn't apply to your industry, you haven't been paying attention. At the end of the day, there are great ideas, and you should pollinate whatever you're doing from wherever they come from. They might come in manufacturing. They might come in education. Everyone's journey is different, and their life experience is incredibly important. And if you are going to be open to facing change with artificial intelligence and these other technologies, this week, quantum computing did the thing where they broke one of the big security encryption keys. There might not be secrets by this time next year. So it's incredibly important for you to understand that people, no matter what industry they've been in and what they've faced, there are life lessons to be learned from them, and that you need to listen to that. At the same time, you need to ask for help and get a coach. So with that brings us to the end of the episode. Cynthia, I really appreciate you on the show today, and I'd love to invite you back for the KC Leaders an episode later.
I would love that.
About that.
Yeah.
So our takeaways from this episode today. Our number one, you need to trust yourself in any piece of this doing. If you're going to improve your mental mettle, your fortitude in facing adversity in your business and change, you need to trust yourself. Those ideas are coming into you for a reason, and you need to understand that if you're going to find a path through those woods, you have to get on the path and you have to do it. Put one foot in front of the other, because if you don't, you never go anywhere. Number two, if you are going out to do these things, if you're going out to accept these things and explore these new opportunities for your business, it could be an established business, it could be a new business, it could be a new venture for your business. You need to understand that the revenue that it brings in, you have to have built in a little bit of a safety net for what you're doing. In this first 2 to 3 years, and we've seen this time immemorial, you will not bring in the revenue you think you're going to in this first 3 years. So look at your projections, scale them back a little bit, find out if you got a little bit of a cushion to land on. But at the same time, that's a smart way through. And if you have that cushion, it's kind of like walking through the woods. If you don't pack a lot of supplies with you, You don't know what you're going to find. And if you don't have the supplies, you're going to turn around before you get halfway to your destination. And the third takeaway here is that even coaches need a coach. If you have not engaged yourself with the right people, you are looking at the problem wrong. What you did to get you here won't get you there. And sometimes you need that out perspective, that wisdom from that person to help move you along. And they don't always have to be coaches who are versed in your discipline. They need to understand what you're missing and help you understand how to get there and to trust yourself in the process. Cynthia, I'd like to thank you again for stopping by. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, David. If you are interested in supporting any of the LaunchCrate authors, especially our youngest author, who is 12 years old, his name is Trey Glasper, we are currently in a campaign to help him sell 1,000 copies of his latest book so that we can increase literacy. Check us out at launchcrate.com. We're at LaunchCrate on all platforms. We'd love to help you out if you're an aspiring author as well. Please come check us out, and we'd love to talk to you.
If you liked what you heard here today, please like and subscribe. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, or any great place that podcasts are done. With that, we're going to be doing another giveaway in this episode, so the vinyl albums will keep coming. I believe that this one is Master of the Puppets by Metallica, so if you want to get a copy of that, vinyl press copy of that, please subscribe to the newsletter. With that, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Cynthia. Go out there, be awesome, and make it a great week.